All you.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the ATG podcast, where we take up your questions and then the four of us try to dive in and bring some clarity and dig up anything we can. So we're covering injuries. That was the most asked about thing this week. Injuries. What makes injuries? How to handle them? How to prevent them? What are the factors of injuries? So my goal is that by the end of this, we've figured out, what are the factors. So I got a pad and pen, and Jeff, we can start with you, and let's just start discussing the factors of injuries. And if we do that, I think by the end of this podcast, we'll figure out for people, how to reduce their chances of injuries and actually understand what creates them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in sports we have contact injuries, which there's really very little control you have over that. I mean, there's always the argument of muscle mass in the right places to protect joints if you play contact sports and things like that. But sometimes there's just like when you collide or you're in contact with another person or object, there's just always going to be more force than your body's going to be able to withstand. So, there's very little we can do about that. But I think training injuries really are, they're not necessary and they're frequent, and non-contact injuries are obviously through the roof right now in almost any sport you look at, basketball, baseball, football.
Yeah, about 70% now is if you're talking about injuries, more than 2 out of 3 injuries right now are things that are not from running into someone or,
right,
cracking a rib, non-contact.
Yeah. I mean, for me, injury comes from a few places, right? So there's flexibility, there's strength, and then there is the structural balance of the two, right? So, even it's funny because even in contact injuries, I'd say a lot of what happens is a lot of times your joints are put into compromised position where you either don't have flexibility, and because you don't have flexibility, you have no way to generate any sort of force back against, whatever that force is coming against you. So if you don't have the flexibility, you're not generating strength in these certain ranges. And one of the other biggest ones is tissue overuse. Just the simple fact that you're doing the same repetitive motion in the same line of tissue over and over and over and over without any sort of variety, changes between intensity and volume. So that's really the other thing, which again, for me, comes back to flexibility. Am I getting enough variation in my movements where I need them for my sport? And am I getting stronger in those variations, right? So ultimately that at ATG, that's kind of what we do. It's at this point pretty much what we're known for is we take all the ranges of motion that people treat as tertiary, priority. They're put into the very end of a training program kind of as an afterthought versus really prioritizing these different areas, the ankles and the elbows and the wrists and so it's kind of what we do. I mean, in a nutshell, to me, injuries are very simple. They're not as complex as people make them. Again, just to summarize on my part, you either don't have the flexibility to go into the position or ranges that are required for your sport or training. B, because of that, you cannot generate strength or force in that range or withstand force in that range. And 3, you're overusing the same line of tissue in your training or shortening the range in your training, which is basically comes from the first points. A, no flexibility. B, no strength through that range. So that's injury in a nutshell, pretty much.
So more range and more strength in that range means you can physically protect yourself. Like they've showed certain athletes, they've showed Michael Jordan falling in the same position that 6 other NBA careers were pretty much ended by, or at least major injuries that they were never the same, and Jordan sprang back up.
I mean, traditionally, at least for the past, 50, 60 years, since the whole, blow up between powerlifting and bodybuilding. And that's basically what all modern strength conditioning certifications and programs and educations are based on. And that's what was adopted into sports training. But those things, there's two problems with that. One is they're sports in themselves. So now you're training a different sport for your sport. And two, they're quite controlled in environments and the action. I mean, powerlifting in itself is really, you're good at three different things. And we use those things to train athletes, which most any team athlete, pick any sport on the planet, the movement is so dynamic and variable that, it's argued that the possibilities are almost infinite. And now you're training them in probably what are two of the most controlled training environments on the planet,
insane,
which is powerlifting and bodybuilding. So, you're just taking people that are supposed to be athletes and you're making them good bodybuilders and powerlifters, but you're not making them good athletes. And I think ultimately that's like the real issue. So,
and that's what the stats prove. The stats talk, and athletes are getting more and more hurt. And we have now been fortunate enough to train guys, NFL and NBA guys, and they hate that their training is just based on those lifts, and they're forced. They have knee tendonitis, but then they're forced into 300-pound squats. Their shoulder hurts, but then they're forced into bench presses. So Derek's had the longest career as a player. What kind of injuries did you have? Was it more contact, non-contact?
I had like a lot of injuries growing up, kind of like to piggyback off of Jeff saying, like when I was in high school, that's probably when I was like my most athletic. I probably could jump the highest, felt the best. And then when I went to college, and I never really lifted in high school, man. I just played outside, played my sports, competed with my guys, and I just like was jumping out the gym, was feeling good, just like never really had an injury. And then when I got started playing college ball, and I had this so-called trainer that was come from Michigan, had a degree from Michigan Wolverines, and started training us, and had us like doing these heavy leg presses and all these different exercises and plyometric drills and stuff like that. My hips ended up being out of alignment, and I had just severe like knee tendonitis, and so getting through college, man, was like a chore. Like I had to get cortisone shots before my games, and then it was just like we did a lot of running, so it was just like my athletic ability went from here and just kind of like plateaued in college, but yeah, and so after that, man, it was just like an uphill battle ever since college. So dealt with a lot.
Yeah, and that shows. You're talking there about non-contact stuff and training related stuff, meaning, your training's supposed to be making you more resilient, but yet what's happening is training is making people less resilient, the other way around. And then Connor's a good one to talk to, because as a dunker, it's, you're not going to like break a rib from getting tackled or something. But yet you were at a point where you weren't sure if you were going to need knee surgery or not, just from the forces of jumping.
Yeah, so I kind of want to touch on like what Derek just said about how, he was more athletic in high school, and then he goes into college and he has these trainers who the whole time Derek is playing basketball, which he's getting a very high volume of elastic stimulus, and then he goes into a gym and then does plyometrics. Like it really doesn't make sense.
And short range leg exercises, right, which is already basketball. And
it's like your training is supposed to supplement your sport and help you be healthier for your sport. But I think a lot of trainers do that where they don't actually take into consideration that the sport is its own training within itself.
Right.
And that's something to where like a lot of dunkers have problems is we all start off only dunking. So for me, for instance, I would just dunk all the time. But when I was only doing dunking, that was okay because it was the stimulus was what I needed. And up until a certain point, I could recover from that. But then when I added in the weight room on top of the jumping and continued that jumping at such a high frequency, then it became too much. And I started to have tendonitis and issues, and that all came, downhill. But yeah, I mean, the getting hit by someone, there's only so much you can do to control that. Like for you, Ben, you landed on someone's ankle. I mean, you can do all the training in the world, but if you're put in the wrong position, nothing you did to prepare for it will stop you from getting hurt. It may lessen the effects, but it's not going to stop it. And with jumping, it's all about knee tendonitis. It becomes this thing where, especially like people who first get into jumping, they've been lifting and they think that lifting stimulus is, oh, I can lift 250 pounds and that's 1.5 times my body weight, so jumping is no problem, like it's just my body weight. But they don't actually understand the forces that are involved in simply just jumping and landing. The amount of force that you're putting through your joints, like peak forces, is much higher than if you're doing a squat, unless you just have insane loads, which you're probably not doing. And so then you have to realize that like these are different, they're different things, and you have to prepare for them. That's something that we were talking about our programs before the podcast that I'm like starting to address, because I realize a lot of people come into my program wanting to be able to jump higher, but they actually don't have the tendon resiliency to even start jumping yet. They need to be doing lower level plyometrics and building up to a point to where they can handle those stimuluses without it hurting them. And if you can get to that point, then those things are very helpful for you. But if you don't take the time to get there and just accept and have a little bit of humility that you're not at that level yet, you're just going to end up in a cycle of getting injured.
Yeah. And this is where we can even break down little specific ones. So every sport is going to have their little areas of sort of, injuries that can happen. In baseball, if you get hit with a pitch, like that shit's going to hurt no matter what. In basketball, you have to think about, we're playing on a flat ground, then we're elevated on a shoe. Then if you land on someone else's foot. So in basketball, the ankle roll is the number one most common, quote unquote, unpreventable injury. But what happens is then it stiffens up. And then when you lose that ankle mobility, well, now scientifically, you just got more likely to have a knee injury and chronic knee pain. So the less that ankle can bend, they've shown the force has to go somewhere. Where does it go? It goes up to the knee. And how many times does someone land in a perfect double ankle sprain? It's like very unlikely. Like you sprained an ankle. So now you have this imbalance that the other leg is normal. And that's even worse. And that's what I want to start diving into, is the imbalance, right? We know, so being strong in the right places is awesome. Okay, being able to do a Nordic has links to preventing ACL tear. But every 3-year-old girl running around is not tearing their ACL. But if you put a 500-pound deadlift on that little girl, she's going to snap her fucking legs if he even tries to. It's the ratio there in the imbalance. So one injury in one place that you just, well, what do? I guess wear an ankle brace now or tape it up, or all of a sudden now you wind up with a knee tear. And it's not always the side that the thing is on. That's the side that we know then is more likely to be fucked up, but it could just as easily be the strong side from now trying to take over and get into a super weird position. Derrick Rose's first ACL, a left to right hop step. We know for a fact he had 0 career dunks jumping off his right leg, 0 career dunks jumping right left prior to that point. So he was used to jumping and planting all his force through the left leg, and when he would dunk, he would land 9 out of 10 times through the left leg. So this leg scientifically had forces on it, which are also proven to create an imbalance leading to knee ligament tear. So his ACL was no fluke. It was actually science. His ACL was pure science, and it was a mathematical equation that was likely to happen at some point. And it wasn't the right knee that it was actually the stronger side that then got into a weird position totally unnaturally. So now instead of absorbing the force through the right, he absorbs a ton of force. And as Connor was saying, yeah, just because you squat even twice your body weight, that's nowhere near the forces of playing basketball, soccer, football. They've actually done, they can measure this stuff. It's a lot more force than that. So injuries are an interesting thing. Is landing and rolling an ankle 100% preventable? Hell no. But are ACL tears more mathematical than they appear? Absolutely. And if you don't then address and rehabilitate from that ankle sprain, not to mention the status it is to begin with, we've seen a lot of cases where there's at least miraculous timetables on recovery. You know what I mean? So that was the balance factor. Let's discuss, Jeff, and maybe you can dive in from a baseball perspective, right? Like pitchers are all, I mean, here's a clear example. 57% now are having shoulder surgery. It ain't to their non-throwing arm, and it ain't because they can't throw hard. It's not because this is not strong, yet they're having to cut this up. If you look at your skeleton when you throw, you're literally trying to throw your arm like off your body. Like you're trying to make your bones fly off your body. So let's discuss now, like in relation to different injuries, where you're strong is, I think, even more important than being strong. Because again, the 3-year-old girl's not tearing her ACL because she's not imbalanced enough in one area. So we're getting closer now, getting this full spectrum. So now let's go into where you're strong and where you're mobile in relation to injuries. Those are the two things now. We got the strength and mobility as the foundation, but where that is. So Jeff, maybe you can discuss some injuries you're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously hip and shoulder is the biggest one. Shoulder, elbow is the biggest in baseball, right? Especially among pitchers, because you have to look at, there's a study that our best friend in the world, what's his name, McGill, did on the different muscle contractions and velocities of like different things, right? And throwing a baseball actually requires the most mobility in the body and requires the most force at the end range to throw a ball 90 something miles an hour, right? So and I think it was compared to like a boxer, like doing a 1-inch punch that Bruce Lee made famous, and then it was just like a core bracing, which you would do like on a squat or a deadlift, right? And the velocity and the flexibility required of the baseball player, the muscle contraction and the firing pattern was actually much, much, much higher, like well beyond what the other ones were. Issue number one is kind of something I talked about the other day, is one of the biggest disservices in youth sports, I think today, aside of just crappy trainers, is trying to pigeonhole athletes into what subpar coaches would call technique, right? So, I kind of talked about this the other day with Lucas, but if you look at a baseball player, right, and if you look at all the greatest pitchers of all time, none of them throw the same way. None of their technique is exactly the same. Their elbow's different, their arm's different. Some throw overhand, some throw underhand, some throw to the side. There's so many different ways to get the job done. And I think that these 80s and 90s eras pitchers, the thing that they were able to do is they just played baseball. They just played their sport, and they didn't have guys telling, well, you didn't release the ball here, so that's not a good pitch, right? They released the ball where they released the ball and got to the mitt. And so I think you're creating a system where you're trying to refine an athlete, one, into a pattern that may not work necessarily for them, and two, now you got to try to repeat that same exact pattern as close to the previous one as you possibly can over and over and over, which comes to tissue overuse, right? Like, I think that if you allow a guy to swing the bat, what's most comfortable for him, instead of trying to pigeonhole him into something that you think is a great technique, it's not universal. There's no such thing as universal technique. Pick any movement from any sport and then compare any athletes, and very few of them look the same. The athlete's going to do what they need to do with their body based on their proportion, on their genetics, where they're strong, where they're weak, where they have flexibility, where they don't.
So how would you directly, if you could take over MLB and a gun was to your head to change the 57% shoulder surgeries, what would you do?
Reduce the volume of throwing. So it's a high velocity activity, near maximal strength every single rep. So I would not treat it any differently than I would sprinting or jumping or a power sport. I would do the minimal amount for them to throw fast as possible. But, for instance, for me, at 12, 13, 14 years old, I was throwing thousands of balls a week, thousands. I mean, it's on a on a kid, that's a lot, especially
Yeah.
for like a period of time where it doesn't matter. You know, you're worried about winning your little league championship. Like no one cares about that. You know what I mean? So instead of preparing the athlete to the point where they're going to go to college or, you know, I get exposure and things like that. But young athletes are just overplayed and overtrained, period.
And these young athletes are getting cut up like a motherfucker.
Young kids, 12, 13, 14 now getting elbow, Tommy John surgeries and things.
At the other thing is, games, they should have live graphic pictures of live surgeries going on if you really want to make a fucking change. Yeah. And it doesn't matter who wins your fucking 7th grade, like, little league shit.
No, not at all. I mean, the other thing is I would train athletes, especially baseball athletes, probably more like we train. I honestly think our system is perfect for baseball athletes because they have to display instant reaction cutting at any point. So the ball, you know, even if you're an infielder, for instance, the ball can go any direction at any point at any time, but your body has to be prepared for to react to instantaneously. Like it's like under a second that you have to react. Get them into more of these weighted movements where they're expressing this strength through a wide range, and train your rotator cuff and train the rotation of the shoulder and train rotation of the hip. And that's about all I would do. Unless you're a catcher, maybe I would never actually have a baseball player do a squat. I would never have them do a deadlift. I mean, Babe Ruth was hitting balls 700 feet.
You're saying you would do more split squat for baseball?
More split squat, more rotator cuff, like very specific.
That's what I would say. Get a world class, have the strongest. If you take any injury, put it in slow motion. Now put it on rewind. You just figured out the world's best workout system. Yet I have a 14-year-old kid and his dad, some of the awesome people, and they're messaging me yesterday, hey, can he throw on some extra bench press? Holy fucking shit. No. You're in pain. You're 14 years old. And now you're going to do a partial range. Like, it just shows how bad the system is. Clearly, they're into their training. They're studying everything out. You know what I mean? Like, these aren't just like newbies. If someone's already on ATG, it means they're already like really looking for answers. And this was just a casual question. It wasn't even like there was no thought process behind it. It's like, oh yeah, can he do extra bench press? Yeah.
No, I would never put a baseball player on a bench press. That's just how I wouldn't do it. I don't care. Eric Cressy could get on here and argue that all day. I would never put a baseball player on a bench press. Train rotator cuff, train the scat, you know.
World-class upper back.
Power raises, trap 3, you know,
that's throwing.
Super simple.
Those 3 are throwing in reverse. So you're just directly protecting your shoulder. And Derek remembers, we had a group of baseball players coming to ATG, and I basically showed them how every single kid on that team was so far below standard on those 3 exercises that they were highly likely to have shoulder surgeries. And these parents did not want to hear that. And their head coach was really pissed about it, and he had them keep doing their same thing. Well, that head coach had 7 shoulder surgeries himself. Welcome to sports. I had 7 surgeries. You little motherfuckers are going to have 7 surgeries.
Yep.
That is
100%.
Sports training in a nutshell. Let's hit the bench press, boys. I can't do my rotator cuff is weak too, and that's why I had 7 surgeries. And I'll be damned if you guys escape that pain that I went through. They ran for the hills. They ran for the freaking hill. And I tested them with math and just showed them how likely they were to have shoulder surgery. But I guess at 7 years old, they don't want to hear that. No, I'm just kidding. They were like 14 or whatever. But so
Connor, mean it's bad.
A gun is to your head. What math do you put in? Like, what do you have guys do to prevent jumper's knee? Because that's 80% in jumping sports. 80. So that's insane. The other 20% are probably just trying to seem tough. I mean, honestly. Yeah,
probably. I think that pretty much if you're in a jumping sport, you have experienced knee tendonitis, and if you haven't, you're lucky. If we're putting a gun to my head, like, what am I going to do? The first thing is, like I said, reduce the plyometric volume outside of your sport. If you're going to be jumping, do it the way you're going to be doing it in your sport and use that as the plyometric. There are times to do it in the weight room, but usually those times are just preparing you for your actual sport. They're not things that you're trying to adapt farther than that. Like, your sport is going to adapt you the best. So just stay healthy and do that. I mean, that's the big change I would do. On top of the full range of motion and getting people more mobility so that they can, train better and be more adaptable, like Jeff says. Like, I think oftentimes people will look at technique as it has to be this very stern thing that you have to jump exactly like this. If you don't jump exactly like this, okay, it's not right. But that's not really the case. More of what technique coaching is about, in my opinion, is getting people to exhibit behaviors, but allowing them to do so in the way that is most comfortable to their body. So like,
can you say that louder for the people in the back? Because I don't think everybody heard that.
Yeah. So again, technique is about getting people to exhibit behaviors, but in a way that is most comfortable for their body. So two people, like, and a great example would be like Isaiah Rivera and myself. We have a lot of very similar looking jumps, but if you go watch them in slow-mo, you're going to see that the angles that we're at and how much we're turned, everything is a little different. And so a lot of what technique training is trying to get you to exhibit that, but then making you understand that there is some sort of journey to finding your technique. But just being there to make sure that you do so in a gradient enough way that you don't just try to force yourself into some crazy position and just explode, basically. Yeah, that's what I would do. I do want to touch on something that we're talking about, injuries. And I think a common thing that happens is people will be considered genetic freaks. And what actually happened was they got lucky and they never got injured. So they can consistently train. One of the biggest things that can prevent injury is just being consistent. And the reason for that would be like detraining. And the whole reason I bring this up is because COVID-19 has happened recently and it's still going on. And people will go into a weight room. They've stopped playing their sport because they don't have access to a gym. And the thing to do when COVID ends is not go right back to playing your sport every day. You need to ease back into things, because when you're not, if I don't jump for 6 weeks, I am not the athlete that I was 6 weeks ago. And it doesn't take that long for a change like that to happen. And you just have to have some perspective on what has actually been going on in your training and in your life, so that when you do get back to it, you're not just going to have an overuse injury occur. And the whole reason, again, for avoiding the injury in the first place is because if you can stay consistent, the odds that you get hurt are much lower. But then let's say that you do get hurt, you sprain your ankle, and most people's solution to something like that is, okay, full rest, just rest until you're better. If you do that, you are setting yourself up to get into the cycle of getting an injury, you rest, that creates imbalances in your body. Then you go back to your sport, you're undertrained, you get injured again, and it just becomes this whole thing that it becomes harder and harder to get out of the deeper into it you get. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. Was just
and the jump, if we look at the jump again, you can go take one of Connor's jumps if you want to use that in slow motion to see like a really powerful jump, and just put it in slow motion and then just watch it and rewind, and you'll see what exercises you're doing. You're doing tibialis raises, yet no study's ever been done on strengthening the tibialis. Yet, come on, we have 80% of players with jumper's knee. It's actually quite pathetic. So you're doing a tibialis raise. When you actually watch it in slow-mo, you're going to go, holy shit, his right knee goes like way over his toe. You're doing a tibialis raise. You're doing a Patrick step up. As Jeff mentioned with the split squats, you're getting into a range that even though you don't express it in your sport, it's actually the full bend is proven to give you more vertical jump improvement than a half squat. And that's because you're training the muscle more fully, and you're actually putting science into improving the tendon. You're actually making your tendon thicker. That's why Olympic weightlifters have thicker tendons than those who don't do full bend. And
not only that, but when you are, so like the jumping portion of a jump is really controlled. The landing is not nearly as controlled. you
much
twist
work.
and to finish and all these things. Oftentimes you'll see me land and go into a full squat because I just land kind of awkward. My center of gravity is off. And so
or
then
a KOT squat, when you jump over someone, I've seen Connor land in the very position that has blown out ACLs for other athletes.
Yeah. And it's like you do want to be training these positions so that you have the variability to actually survive just ending up in one.
So I didn't think about that. So watch the jump and the land, and then start to, like, when you save a video on your phone, you know, you can just kind of scroll along. Now start to look at it in reverse. So the landing is like very intense on the calves and VMOs. The jump itself, super intense on the tibialis and VMOs. Your hips are stretching really far. And we kind of went over ankles, knees, shoulders. I wanted Derek to chime in on hips because he mentioned I never got into really bad. The hip issues I ran into was more like hip flexors, you know, like the slow-footed guy who like can't get his knees up and is always tearing up his hip flexors. But in terms of like my hips themselves, my ankles and knees were the weak links. So I wanted Derek to chime in on hips, and then I wanted to come back to Jeff on elbows and wrists because I know we're going to get questions on those. And we've actually done a pretty decent job covering ankles, knees, shoulders, but of the main joints, hips. Derek, if you want to chime in, what changed for you?
Yeah.
You know.
So like I said, mentioned, like when I was in college, they had me doing these heavy squats and heavy leg press and a lot of different like plyometric drills, which created like a lot of imbalances in my body. And when I got x-rayed, because I used to have a lot of hip pain and like really a lot of inflammation. And so when I got x-rays, my hips are out of, like, one was high, one was low. It was really, I don't know the correct terminology that they use for it, but it was really off center. And so that caused a lot of pain in my hips. And like I said, I had to get cortisone shots. But and I had to endure that playing basketball overseas, playing every day. I just had to really take that pain. It wasn't until I started the ATG movements where I really got deep into the split squats, where I really got good at the couch stretch with the pure forming stretch, and really learned how to like care and tend for that area where I kind of saw my imbalances, where I saw where I was weak, where I really could pinpoint, okay, this is why I have this problem. You know what I'm saying? Like
you had like the tightest hips out of all of us.
Yeah. No doctor, no therapist, nobody I ever went to out of all that time could tell me, you know. So it wasn't until I started doing those split squats, so I saw, man, okay, I'm a lot tighter on one side. When I did cot stretch, I'm a lot tighter on one side. So that kind of really opened me up. And today, like, I just feel so much more centered and so much more balanced and moving a lot more freely, you know. So that's like my hip story, man. And I'm excited. Like maybe Jeff's got a hip mobility program starting up, so I'm excited to kind of take that journey, man, and really like sharpen the saw a little more.
Absolutely. And I think we've all just kind of, something's just kind of illuminated into my mind that I think I need to start popularizing like hell. And I think we figured out the giant flaw in exercise science is that they're studying so many goddamn 8-week programs. And that's just not what it means to become great. You don't become great in 8 weeks. And if you're only testing something for 8 weeks, is it not a study that knee pain is now a freaking epidemic? Is that not a study? We have a case study of millions. We have a case study of millions for baseball who are tearing their shoulder open. It doesn't matter if you improve rate of force development on a bench press, because it's a bigger case study that 57% of those guys are getting cut open. So no one's doing long-term enough studies for these studies to be worth shit. And I think we just uncovered something really big there, which is if you're talking about injuries, but these studies are so short-term and it's so new in the game, like an ATG split squat has never been tested. Yet an ATG split squat, full bend squat, proven better with doctor analysis of 164 different studies. And split squat itself, like a half split squat versus a half rep squat, is proven to give you actually similar speed and force development. So if you can get similar force development on a full on a split squat as a squat, but if a full bend squat is proven better, Yet where's the fourth piece of that puzzle is the ATG split squat. 0 studies have been done on it. 0 studies on loading the tibialis. 0 studies on the Patrick step up, even though it's proven that better ankle bend and better on a step down test equals healthier knee. Less chance of chronic pain, less chance of tearing a knee ligament. No studies on doing that movement and strengthening it. So it's actually kind of insane. And Jeff was mentioning stuff with the shoulder, and there's evidence right there for your thoracic mobility, like, and your rotator cuff strength. The evidence is all there, even on what they've done, but it's all just such short-term little clues. And there's no long-term studies analyzing anything worthwhile. I mean, that's probably too much of a generality to say anything, but again, it's like, it's a huge flaw is that they think that a world-class athlete is made in 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think a big point of it, and I wrote something down, like, it's a lot of people just listening to the wrong people, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's the big factor. If I'd have known then what I know now, and like I say this all the time, I probably said this on plenty of podcasts, never listen to anyone in any field that is not experiencing the results you want to produce. My strength and conditioning coach probably couldn't jump over a telephone book. You know, he was trying to teach us. We came in there freak athletes, and he's teaching us how to be an athlete. You know,
how backwards is that? How fucked up is that? You're a great athlete. He's not. You should have been teaching him.
Exactly. I could have been teaching him everything we do in the park, outside my friends, the competition as far as us trying to jump, like just different things we did. And I remember we used to squat really deep and jump up with a medicine ball, like just playing around. Like we used to like do different things just on the park that when we go into the weight room, and this guy that's just built like a fucking
He's certified in powerlifting, and I'll bet he may be better at powerlifting.
Yeah, exactly. I got strong and thick, but I wasn't athletic anymore, you know, and it's depressing, you know what I'm saying? When and a lot of, and all of us on the team just kept getting different injuries, man. My head coach was like, "What the fuck? What's going on?"
And he
like,
thinks
you know
the players are soft, and he, you know, and then these coaches are complaining the players are soft. No one takes responsibility for it. I got on a rant yesterday so hard that my dog started like shaking and had to leave the room. Like he was scared. I had to go settle him down.
I believe it. I believe it. What the fuck happened?
But it was that NBA guy who came in he got cut from the NBA like a week prior because he couldn't play because his shoulder was in so much pain. And it started when he was being made to bench press a certain weight. And they said, if you can't go all the way down, just go as far as you can. And that messed up his rotator cuff. And then the strength coach said, you have a pre-existing condition. That's why that happened. He took no responsibility for it and then told him to rehab it by doing push-ups and to only go down as far as you can on the push-up. Yet he's actually going against the real science on what keeps your shoulder. He's actually creating shoulder injury. Now, Derek, imagine for you, if you got that NBA shot and then someone messes you up because of a bench press, can you imagine? I would have already killed the guy by now. I would have been in prison because of being a sniper outside of that strength coach if that was me. I mean, can you imagine having your basketball career?
Man, listen, that happens every day, man. That happens every day. All these college athletes and NBA athletes are getting injured like that.
And they take no responsibility. Your strength coach, if you look at the science behind it, he's your best chance of not getting hurt. By the time it goes to the medical staff, what do all their stats show? Once you have this injury, you're more likely to have it again because we freaking suck and we're not going to be able to do anything about it. I mean, the stats show that. Once you've had one ankle sprain, 4 times more likely for another. That just proves that your medical staff sucks. Your training room sucks. And this is all just once you've had one hamstring, one knee. So you already know your training room sucks. The strength coach is the one guy out there who can help fix things. The head coaches are way too stubborn to stop making you run miles, even though another one. They're just saying, I want you guys to be even slower. I want your vertical jump to be lower. If you miss this free throw, I'm going to lower your vertical jump another inch. Because we know for a fact, 60 meter, 100 meter, 200 meter, 400, the longer you run, the lower your vertical jump. If you're on my team, we're hitting the baseline, and I'm going to lower the fuck out of those verticals. Get on the line.
Man.
And if you talk back, I'm going to lower your verticals some more because I want to lose my fucking job.
What we're talking about is literally like I think the entire industry is rather ego driven and not just results driven.
Exactly.
And it's
Ego
not
driven and money driven, and you know,
I've told this to people before, but one of the biggest reasons I joined ATG was because my entire goal is it's not money. It is to help as many people as possible jump as high as possible. And I have no preconceived notion of what that means. Like whatever actually works is what I'm going to tell you to do. And if I learn that something works better than that, I will change my mind. I will say that thing I had you doing was not as good as it should have been, but I can do better. Like, I don't understand why more strength coaches don't have that approach. And I also think that even in basketball in high school and stuff, why is your head coach so concerned about winning this thing when he could be creating a ton of great athletes who someday make it to the NBA?
And not to mention,
it's because
he's so worried
it's because
when you're
when
a freshman, he cares about the local district thing, and that's why he'll stay in the local district when if he trained you right, by the time you're a senior, you'd be winning state championships. Even by the end of a single season. Let the
so everyone can give him a standing ovation at the town hall. You know what I mean? Woo,
But
Tulsa,
ego driven. You're right.
You know,
like who do the I don't understand that, because even if your goal was to boost your ego, creating better athletes over a longer period of time, like who are you going to remember? The guy who won 5 state championships? Woo, great for you. Are you going to remember the guy who made 20 freak athletes who went to the NBA?
That's how you make millions. And John Calipari's famous for it. They don't have to work out and shit like that. It's like, you're a stud. You're going to get treated like one. You're going to play 1 year here and go make a bunch of money. And then when you're John Wall and then you wind up doing strength training, then you start to get fucked up. John Wall, another example, fucked up by strength training, yet was doing great and was at his most athletic before he started touching the weights.
He was a freak.
Yep.
And that's not to say you shouldn't touch the weights, but it's just the way it's being done. Yeah.
How you touch them has everything to
you
do
got
with
to
it.
touch them right.
I think a lot of people just have rigid belief systems and are scared to change because their father told them this, their head coach told them that. You know what I mean? A lot of these beliefs are just handed down. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of these degrees are just all these books are written one way, and they just kind of scared to go against the grain because so many people are just scared.
The problem is
exactly.
It takes guts to be different.
A lot of scared bitches out here.
Yep.
The problem is most systems are based on tradition. As far back as they go. And, one of the scariest statistics is if you look at modern orthopedic surgery, okay? Modern orthopedic surgery, 250,000 deaths from medical malpractice and orthopedic surgery annually in the United States, not in the world, in the United States. A quarter million people die from decisions made by surgeons. It wasn't a 50-50, he could make it, he could not. There was a clear right choice and there was a clear wrong choice, and that surgeon picked the clear wrong choice. And a lot of it comes down to they're working a job where they work 3-4 days straight with no sleep. We know sleep science, by the way, tells us that, man, if you even go 1 day with no sleep, the kind of cognitive effects that it has, the effects it has on your memory, the effect it has on making decisions. But because 100 and however many years ago, when orthopedic surgery was founded by a cokehead, by the way, who was strung out on coke for 4 days so he could perform surgery, all of modern tradition and modern orthopedic surgery is based off that one guy who was a cocaine addict. But it doesn't catch up to what actually the science actually says today, what is good for you, what is bad for you. The fact that you have health professionals that go 4 days without sleep and then they go and operate on you, I mean, that's just crazy.
A recent investigation showed that 1 in 3 knee replacements being performed did not have the evidential backing and was done because it's so profitable for the doctor and the hospital. Now, that means that out of the 790,000 knee replacements last year, that means we're talking now over 250,000 unnecessary knee replacements at $57,000 a pop. And now consider that 1 in 100 just die because of complications of surgery, unnecessarily. So you're talking about thousands of people a year in the U.S. alone are going in for a surgery that legally they're not supposed to have, and they're going to die because of that, just so the doctor and the hospital can make money. I didn't do that investigation. A freaking actual like authority thing did the investigation and determined 1 and 3. In my book, it would probably be more like 9 and 10 are, you know, so this is even by their medical shit, they still determined that over 250,000 knee replacements were done unnecessarily last year alone. So yeah, it's part of a system, but to give people a positive light, what Derek said about trusting people who have achieved the exact result you're trying to achieve. If you follow, I use that as a guiding principle in life now. I remember Derek telling me that a while ago, and I probably heard him say it 500 times before I really got it, honestly. 500 times. Yeah. But now I was asked, what are my 2 keys to success? And my key number 1 is exactly that, right? And it already throws everything out the door. Why would you go to a jump coach who can't jump high? Why would you, and maybe what if he's a genetic freak and he's never improved his vertical since he was 16? Well, what if your vertical at 16 is freaking 20 inches? So do you want to experience the result? Like, it's literally that simple. Go to someone who actually experienced the result you want. If you want a business coach, don't go to a guy who's broke, but also that means you can't just go to a guy who inherited a bunch of wealth. You know what I mean? So it's so hard to fail in life, actually, if you literally go learn from people who experienced the exact result that you want to experience. Exactly. So that's your foundation. And then if you want to be wildly successful, you know what you have to do? You have to literally go put what you wish had existed. Meaning if you want a better automobile, well, first go learn from someone who experienced the result of making an automobile company or whatever. Obviously, in certain areas, that's really hard to access people like that. You know what I mean? In others, it's really easy and it just quickly weeds out the bullshit artists. But then you might have to literally go make what didn't exist. So it's just really interesting. Like, go to someone like, you want to jump higher. Okay. Connor would be a logical choice. I'll probably get blasted for this, but Tim Grover, Michael Jordan's trainer, is just not a good choice of a jump program for the simple reason that Michael Jordan could jump higher prior to training with him. It's right there. It's on tape. It's not something you can or need to measure. And any measurements used, you now know it's actually a lie because it's right there. He was dunking from the foul line with his head over the rim before doing any of that training. Then he wound up with really nasty chronic knee tendonitis, and he did get his upper body more muscular. So if you want to not improve your vertical, wind up with nasty knee tendonitis, and jack up your upper body, do that program.
Didn't Tim Grover
jump
didn't
attack.
He train Dwayne Wade too? He trained Dwayne Wade.
There is so much.
And look what happened to Dwayne Wade.
Yeah. There is so much plyometrics in that program. It will blow your mind it's absolutely insane how much plyometrics there is in that program to give a basketball player. So your knees are going to hurt so bad. Your lifting form is going to suck. And of course, it's just a book. No one's even watching you lift. So your lifting form is going to go to shit. Your range of motion, my squat form became like, if you blinked, I probably already finished the squat. It was okay. Because my knees hurt so bad, I'm like, how do I even get into these exercises? Because the plyometrics are destroying my knees. So you jump higher for like a couple weeks, but guess what? The upper body feels great. So you're getting like good upper body development while you get nasty knee tendonitis. So you can't even jump as high like a year later as you could. That's the exact results Michael Jordan experienced. And the upper body strength did make me a better player. But it made me a better 6-foot white guy with a 19-inch vertical who could muscle you a little. Derek knows. He played against me. Remember that? I had a little more muscle.
I remember you. Yeah. Your step back was strong.
But I was starting at such a pathetic and short athlete that extra, I experienced the results that MJ experienced.
You could not jump, man. I used to play with that Drew over at Drew. You could shoot that bitch. You could not jump. Too.
I was like,
you were strong in the paint, man. You was real strong in the paint, though. You're right.
Yeah. So,
hey, I heard you say the other day, man. What would you call that program, man? How to bulk up as an athlete or something like that?
Yeah. How to bulk up your upper body, get chronic knee tendonitis, and lower your vertical. That's the actual result. So, if you go to someone though who actually experienced the result, we see it every day. Connor makes anybody dunk who's never dunked before, but he actually has experienced that. If you go to some statistician, like the guys down at DBC in Miami, who are statisticians with a bunch of graphs but can't dunk, don't be surprised that your program ends up giving you shitty results. They have not experienced the results you want to achieve. If you want to write a book, please go to someone who wrote a book, not someone who just has a class on it and gives you a bunch of shit to do, but doesn't actually write successful books. And the guy who writes the successful book will probably tell you, start fucking writing, you know, and he'll probably give you a totally different advice than someone who has not experienced that result. You don't know what advice you're going to get, but they did it. They did it, so they know how you can do it.
Yeah, I think another
people. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say with the jumping thing, I think another thing too is like, be wary of trainers who guarantee you all these things. Like,
that means they haven't experienced it. If they say 6 weeks in 6 or if they say 6 inches in 6 weeks or whatever, I gotta see video of them because they must have a 2,000 inch vertical.
And also, I think the thing is too that like this is something that I think we all can agree on. There is so much variance in person to person that me guaranteeing you that you're going to gain 6 inches in 6 weeks, it is a lie. The fact that anyone can even market that is ridiculous to me. And it's not that you can't get better. Like if anyone ever DMs me, I will say 100% you can get better. I think that a lot of people can achieve 40-inch verts if they put in the time. But the thing that people don't want to hear is that it is going to take you 8 years. Oh, you're going to have to be able to train consistently that entire time. And if you take a year off, you might lose half your gains and then have to work back up again. Like, people just don't want to.
On one hand, I've been told a human male cannot improve vertical by more than 15%. And they thought I was insane to say that just about any male could reach a 40-inch vertical. Yet, even though we have more of an optimistic view, we have a more optimistic view truly than any other, system of jump training. We think anyone can get to a 40-inch vertical. However, people don't like hearing, I think you can gain 2 to 3 inches on your vertical per year. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. I think you've mistaken something. You said per year, you said 2 to 3 inches in a year. Like, I was wondering if I could gain that in a month. And like, maybe you could, but the highest jumpers in the world, like, do you want to be the best in the world? They got there through 2 to 3 inches per year. And it comes back to this thing we were talking about of you build greatness over a precise strategy over a long term. Same with injury prevention and everything else. Yet the studies are so short term. No study is going to be relative to what the highest dunkers in the world are doing. No study has said, let's see what happens over 6-8 years. How did Connor end up with this jump now? How long of a process has it been for you? 6-8 years?
More like 14 or 15, but yeah.
Right, but where's the study on that? The study is on, this will make you jump higher in 6 weeks. And it's usually with a non-trained person who's not overtrained. It's not with someone in season and playing their sport, and it's usually with someone regular. If these, where are those 6-inch, 6 week guys? Where the fuck are they? Because even in a single year, if they maintained that for a year, they'd have over a 50-inch vertical. Do the math.
Yeah.
I'm a math guy.
The other problem too with these shorter term
if they
studies.
Started at 0, by the way, if they started at an average male. So if you started at an average male 25-inch vertical and you gained 6 inches in 6 weeks, if you kept that up, okay, you're going to have over a 75-inch vertical. I would like that.
Yeah.
I want a 75. But where's the first guy? Like, where's just one example?
I think another thing with these like short-term studies is it just doesn't do justice to the other factors that come in. So like we're talking about, like I actually think that a lot of people can gain a lot more vert faster doing other things in a short period of time, but those like processes are not sustainable over a long period of time. So if I have you do a ton of plyometrics and I have you just lift heavy as hell, okay, you're going to jump, maybe you gain 6 inches in a month. But if you do that for 3 months, you'll be jumping lower because you don't stay healthy. You get injured and then it becomes a whole nother cycle. And the thing you're doing will not fix it.
Yeah, you're right. Injuries are the secret. If you could wave a magic wand and never you get hurt, you would just keep getting more athletic. Well, that's what the hell we're doing. Literally. I mean, like, by the way, I've been for like 2 weeks straight now, Connor, I've been jumping every single day.
Yeah.
And my point is not to advise someone to do this, but I've been going upstairs and I've been doing my penultimates. I've been doing 2 foot and 1 foot and working on landings every single day. I'm hooked on it. It gets warm outside. My body feels great. My point is just that you earn new levels of resilience. And guess what? I remember as a kid seeing the genetic freaks who are able to do that, and they would keep jumping higher. But for me, it hurt my knees to jump. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like Connor said, maybe the genetic freaks are just the ones who never got hurt, like LeBron.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe the genetic freaks just never got hurt. It's really interesting. And if you have an injury that comes in that you can't control, you cannot neglect that. You have to fully rehabilitate that. Otherwise, evidence indicates that's going to now lead to the next thing. And again, our coaches often then push us, oh, tape that ankle up and get back out there. Is it really worth it? I was like 12 when I had my first really bad ankle sprain. Looking back, it's like, holy shit, maybe that was, I mean, I had the overuse as well, you know what I mean? But that may have also set certain things off because you get rushed right back out there to a rec league game that didn't even, I mean, you know, I'm in like a co-ed rec league game and it's like NBA finals, you know? If Jeanette misses that layup, you know, we might get knocked out of the semis, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, you got to get that trophy, you know, you got to get that ribbon.
Jeanette better make that layup, all right? So,
well, now they give trophies to everybody, so it doesn't even matter now.
Yeah, you got to be able to talk shit at the bar.
They're like all the same size.
Let me rest.
Like first, seventh, like they're just the same size trophies.
Coach, let me rest 12 weeks because I'm still gonna get a trophy, man, and no one's ever gonna get close enough to my trophy on my dresser to know what it says anyway. So it's okay.
When I was 12, my dad got pissed because I threw away my second place trophy at like a huge tournament. I threw that shit away. He's like, "Where's your trophy?" Threw it in the dumpster. Like
Ooh,
he was pissed for a second,
man.
but I think as he like stayed mad because you like once you're a parent, once you're like mad about something, you can't then be like. But I think then it ruminated and he was kind of like, you know.
Good point.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You know, I gotta get esoteric, man. So sometimes sometimes I have gotten injuries in the past, man, by just like being in the wrong environment or having bad energy around me. Like
this is where we have to finish out, dive into it, because I agree 100%. And this is where this has to finish out on injuries. Everything we've talked about is physical, but I know it's about to get mental, and I agree. So this, for anyone listening who's hung on this far, you're about to get some amazing knowledge.
Yeah. So one thing I respect about you, being Connor and Jeff, man, you guys got good habits, and I think creating good habits will keep you pretty much injury free. I haven't seen you guys come out with any sickness, any cough, any injuries. And it's not because those things don't exist in your world. It's because you guys got good habits and you guys create good environments around yourself. You know what I mean? And you have positive outlooks and a positive mindset, and you look for the good in things. And I think sometimes, man, throughout my life, if I'm in a negative state of mind, if I have negative energy around me, it's a cause and effect relationship to that. And I can end up getting injured. I can end up playing basketball and coming home with a broke finger or a broke leg or something that is the effect of a cause that maybe I'm unaware of. But now that I'm in my 40s and I understand life a little better, I understand how important having a positive state of mind, having positive people around you, having good habits, having a good diet, having good karma, those things have an effect on your physical body, man, in the physical realm. So I just, I always got to touch on a little piece of the unseen.
I'm glad you did, because I would have forgot. And it's something I've actually helped kids out with, because I used to just mentor like a lot of kids, you know what I mean? And yeah, they would fall and break their arm, you know what I mean? You'd have these random injuries come up, right? So I want to be really clear that there's injuries that are caused by like knowingly, like if you're weak in your knee exercises and then you go do a bunch of jumping, you're asking the universe for knee pain, right? So I want to be really clear between if you're playing basketball and you hurt your knee, that's one thing. If you're playing basketball and you get elbowed and get a broken nose, why does that happen to you, right? You see what I mean? Those are what I'm trying to distinguish here, because I think you can do something. I think 70% of injuries don't have to exist. I think the other 30%, I think we're so powerful that we cause them to ourselves. And what I mean by that is I think when you're really vibing and when the vibe is right, you just don't seem to get hurt. And when the vibe is not right and you don't want to be a part of it, that's when I see guys get hurt. I remember a kid whose dad was like at the games fuming. You could feel the kid being so uncomfortable on the court. He didn't want to be on the court, and he like fell and broke his hand or something. And it was like, in my mind, I'm like, he did that to himself. He didn't want to be there. And so that has a lot to do with the people around you. You know, as a kid, you might even trace back some of these moments where, you know what I mean, where you had, you know, a parent who was on you so hard that you ended up getting hurt to get out of something or whatever. You ended up getting sick to conveniently miss, you know, a school trip that you knew the bully was going to be making your life hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All my personal injuries, when it came to stuff like that, I could always trace to some negative energy around me like that. The last one you mentioned with my ankle sprain, that was the only, and I was back dunking within 9 days because I understand the first part of it. But with the mental side of it, I was doing great, hadn't had any kind of injury or niggle or anything of any kind for like years. And a specific person who had a really negative energy that I was trying not to be around came into the basketball gym at a time that I didn't even know they were going to be there. This was another coach that I had bad experiences with and that I had been taken advantage of. And I'm telling you, boom, I immediately landed my attention.
I remember that.
And that's the only, I have not had, you got, like Connor, you know, you guys all know from playing basketball, I never have anything and I haven't for years. And the one time some gym times got crossed up and someone in my life who had taken advantage of me came into that gym, boom, ankle sprain. That was it. That's my only injury in years, only illness in years. So
I remember that, man.
I'm really glad Derek brought up the mental and spiritual side of it. And I think it has everything to do with the energies that are around you, because then you're just in your zone vibing and you don't have this extra attention there. And you don't have this potential of just wishing you weren't on the court, wishing you weren't in that space. If you don't want to be in that space, you are so powerful. I mean, think how powerful we are. We somehow inhabit little human life form and grow into this and I mean, it's like we are so powerful to think that an injury could not be connected to you not wanting to be in that space. It would be insane to think that there's not a connection there.
Yeah, and just even on a simple level of, if you don't want to be there, you're not focusing. So if you're not focused, you're not going to avoid things. It's like driving while intoxicated. Like, you're not going to do that because you know that you're going to be in a chance for wreck.
Right. So how many times when we play sports are you an inch away from disaster at all times? Why does that 1 inch end up happening? You see what I mean? And so Connor's saying it I'm saying it from like a deeper knowing level, but Connor's even saying it from a very real level, which is that if your attention is on that, then it's not on playing your sport. And if that's a contact sport, there's too much going on there and you will get that elbow in the nose. We come inches from that every time we play sports, but nothing happens. And then why that one time when your attention's on something, then it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had an injury. It's been years. And
most Brazilian guy I know for sure.
Man, for real.
The biggest changes I made in my life, other than just like, you know, training, but is like the people in my life, right? Just like you guys said. And, you know, there's literally, I can count on two hands the people I'm in contact with on a daily basis. And it doesn't go much further than that. Not because I'm not a social person or I don't like people or whatever. It's just that I have a number of people that are ethical, good, responsible people that I keep in my life at any point in time. And when I keep that in, you know, nothing but ethical, nice, responsible things happen. You don't get that. Yeah. You don't get that energy that Derek's talking about, right? Like, and you know, I've definitely been. You say, look back at your, like anytime something happened to me, I got sick, I got hurt or whatever, I'm in with the wrong people, I'm making the wrong decisions. Like, I always try to take as much responsibility for any condition that I'm put in. It's easy to blame other people or blame circumstances, but you know, that doesn't do anything for anybody. That doesn't empower you. It just makes you helpless, right? And so, you know, take responsibility for your condition and look at things that you shouldn't have been doing or could have done better, or those kind of things. I think you guys are right on the money with that. 100%.
Yeah, and I also think that part of it too, like talking just about the mentality things, like even within injuries, like, because this whole thing is supposed to be about injuries, so I'll keep it connected somewhat. But it's like you and I may not have the same situation. You may not have a weight room. You may not have this specific bar. You know, it could be any number of things that you think there's some reason you can't succeed. But none of us can control really where we start at, but we can control what we do with what we have at any given moment. And so, like, if you're always being positive and you're always trying to make the most out of any moment, like, you're going to get crazy far with that. But even if you have everything, if you aren't trying to make the most of it, you're going to end up with nothing. That's just how it works. And it's so, like, the whole reason I say that is if you bring it back to injuries, it's the same thing. If you get injured and, oh man, I'm hurt, I can't train anymore, I just got a bed rest, and then you end up bringing more injuries about yourself because you're not trying to get back to your sport. If you're not trying to get ready to go play, even though you're injured. And I'm not saying, like, if you tear your ACL, don't just be running around like an idiot, but do the things you can do to get back. Because if your energy is all focused on getting back, you will get back.
Yep. Yeah. So the goal was to kind of have something simplified down to, like, how to prevent yourself from getting injured. And we've basically established that you have to train right according to the physics of your sport and your own body, as mentioned with, like, you can't be pigeonholed into certain technique, and you can't think that a bench press is going to protect you for a pit. You got to honestly confront the physics of your sport, and you have to train according to those physics, regardless of what any powerlifting textbook says. You have to train right according to the physics of your sport and your body, because, again, we talked about the imbalances and all these things, and you got to have positive vibes around you. And I think those are the two best things. Train honestly according to the physics of your sport and your body, and put positive vibes around you. And I think that's the best you can do. And you still have the risk, but I don't think you'll get hurt if you have those two things. If there wasn't a risk, sports wouldn't even be as much fun. It's part of what makes something a game, you know? Yep. If no one could get hurt and everyone's just, like, boxing, just, like, I mean, just be kind of, right. This is the game of life that we happen to live in. We have to eat something or we'll eventually die. We have to sleep. I mean, it makes no sense that we have to go, I'm going to go dormant mode, like, every night. Like, it's kind of, life is a bit ridiculous if you think about it.
Let me plug in.
Yeah. If I don't do that, I'm going to, like, why can't I just have a charger and, like, hook up or something? I don't know. So this is where it's at. Sports have injury risk. So it doesn't mean that you're going to eliminate the risk, but it means that you can reduce the unnecessary ones. And I think you can, even with the positive vibes around you, I just don't think those unavoidable ones will happen to you.
That's real, man. That's real.
Yep. I'm out.
All right. kneesovertoesclothes.com, ATG shorts.
Good work, guys.
MrInfinity.com, man.
You've got to do Derek's 30-day
man.
challenge that's coming out. You're going to see us posting all about it. That is probably going to get you a lot of the mental shit we're talking about right here to prevent those injuries, not to mention, of course, the physical stuff. Hip ability program. I mean, everything we're doing is for what you're asking for, and it all centers around our philosophy. Never get hurt, and you are the genetic freak. Interesting concept.
All right.
Yes,
Peace.
sir. Go hard this week.
Yep.